There's many different versions of that. There's another one called Two Characters, One Light Bulb, where the same person plays an expert and a novice, and they break down a misconception about a subject.
That seems like it would be so much fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. So Erica Kohlberg has killed it with that format with legal, but it's used for finance, nutrition, diets. Dr. Julie Smith uses one called Visual Metaphors, where she's breaking down subject matters like PTSD, anxiety, panic attacks, using visual metaphors to tell that. So those are just examples of formats. There's hundreds of these formats available, and we always recommend choosing one that you're truly excited and passionate about. We never force a format on somebody, but we're just talking about a format to show that there's a clear blueprint to success. Like if you think about, again, started in the film industry, went to film school. Any film made in the past 50 years all uses the same format. It's called the 3-act structure. It doesn't matter if we're watching Star Wars, Harry Potter, Friday the 13th, Oppenheimer. All of those movies are using the same structure. If you think about Steven Spielberg, one of the greatest storytellers of our lifetime, he doesn't reinvent that structure each time he makes a movie. He's perfecting the nuances of it. Now, most people hear about trends, and people tell you, do a trend. What is a trend? Well, if you think about like one of the most popular ones back in the day was the Ice Bucket Challenge. Everybody was involved in that. Does anybody do the Ice Bucket Challenge anymore? No, because it died out. And that's the difference between a trend and a format. Trends are very fleeting. And if you keep chasing trends, how are you going to master the nuances of communicating through these mediums if you're just chasing the ball over and over again? The other analogy I can say is like, let's say we want to learn a musical instrument, but one week you started with the piano, the next week you started with the saxophone, and then you were the flute, and then you were the xylophone. Are you going to be good at any of those instruments? No. So that's the power of a format, is we choose that format and we perfect the nuances of how we use that format to communicate with the world.
That is so good. So it seems like, let me ask you a question, because you said all movies use the 3-act structure. What are the 3 acts?
So there's basically an inciting incident in the first few minutes, like the actor,
main character has some.
The main character experiences some type of major shift in their life, and then there's a plot point twist in the first act that leads to the second act, where they're going through different elements of challenges and struggles before that final third act plot that hits, and then there's a climax in that third act, and then the resolution at the end of it. So within that structure, there's a lot of nuance that can happen. Like if you think about like Harry Potter versus like Jaws, they feel like completely two different movies, but they're using that same structure to kind of the story that's being told.
Wow, so good. So I have a, what's the word I'm looking for? I think that you can be, like you talked about before, you can be your authentic self, use a format, and still your content can go viral. So I have a unique niche that I discovered, right? In that I teach business based on biblical principles. That's not that seems to be a strange combination until somebody hears it, and then it's like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. So how important is it for a person to remain who they are while they're exploring which format to use?
It's incredibly important to remain who you are, because again, going back to those 3 core pillars, if we want to monetize that attention, if we're disjointed from what our core service is to the world or our core business, it's not going to be aligned. So one of the elements that we do talk about, so definitively you want to stay core to who you are.
Sure.
But you need to figure out what is the best way to contextualize my expertise so the widest possible audience can connect with it.
Sure.
Because again, we have to go back to what causes us to get people to watch our content. It's the algorithms control that reach and distribution. And what they care about is keeping people on the platform longer. But what they want us to do the heavy lifting for them, in terms of they're not going to like do all these calculations in the back end to find exactly who your specific audience is and connecting with them at the right time and things of that nature. They want content that they can see to millions of people and still hold attention.
And then let people raise their hand and say, hey, I like this.
Exactly. So the real goal is how do we stay true to who we are, communicate to our core audience, but also make what we're talking about interesting to the wider population. So to give you an example, there is a luxury real estate agent, Ryan Serhant. He just had a show on Netflix, but I can definitively tell you he's successful on social media because he understands social media. It was well before the Netflix series. And if you think about him, he's selling $15 to $250 million properties in Manhattan. You can't get more niche than that in terms of who you're trying to reach with your subject matter.
Yeah, for real.
So he has a core audience that drives his business. But what he understands is the mastery of this, what we call the generalist principle. So what does he do? Is he does videos on YouTube like, let me take you on a tour of a $7 million closet. Let me take you on a tour of a $250 million ranch. So what he's doing is he's playing to the wide generalist population of, I want to see that video even though I can't afford that.
Right. I want to see what it looks like.
Exactly. But at the same time, he's generating millions and millions of views on that content. And if less than 1% is his core target audience, he wins and beats out his competition by 100x. Because he's generating millions of views on his content, whereas competitors are probably generating thousands of views. He's even said that he has sold a $30 million penthouse through a YouTube video. So that is the power of virality, playing to the generalist principle, but not losing sight of who he is, what he represents, his message, and his core clientele.
Wow. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter what your niche is, as long as you have a real business that's already viable.
Yeah.
Right. That matters. You got to have something actual. You have to be able to provide value for somebody other than yourself. But apart from that, pick a format that resonates with you, and then be consistent in that format and work on getting better at it, and you should be able to reach more people.
100%. And an interesting, some of the work that we did together was initially do an analysis channel is look at your most viewed videos and your least viewed videos, and then just go create 3 new thumbnail and headlines for your most viewed and least viewed and see what happens to the views after that. Because YouTube has an A/B testing tool where you can test 3 thumbnails and headlines at the same time. And that can give you clues in terms of going forward, how to contextualize the content going forward, to see what the impact is in terms of shifting the messaging in a subtle way to see if it drives up the performance.
So good. And for those of you on YouTube who are watching right now and you're thinking, why are they talking so much detail about like a format and going viral? Here's why. Because if I were to ask those of you who are watching on YouTube or anybody in the studio today, how many hours are in a day, what would you say? You'd say, well, there are 24. And I would say, it depends on whose day. What does that mean? Well, there are 24 hours in a day. There are 8,760 hours in a. There are 8,760 hours in a year, and yet, yesterday on YouTube, people spent. Let me see here. Watch time hours. People spent 10,191 hours watching my videos on YouTube yesterday. People spent 327,200 hours in the last 28 days watching my YouTube videos. And so I'm talking to a lot of people who have businesses and a lot of people who are aspiring to have businesses. And like, in order to have that much attention 20 years ago, and if you were going to buy that much attention on television, it would have cost you more money than you could afford to spend. There are billion-dollar companies that weren't spending enough money to get that much reach 20 years ago. Am I wrong?
You couldn't even buy 10,000 hours of focus in a single day.
In a day.
Through
TV. Yeah, in TV. It's like, it didn't exist. Do you understand? When he says the democratization of attention or the democratization of reach, like anybody can reach everybody, but almost nobody does because people don't want to go deep on creating or developing a skill that's valuable enough that a large number of people care, right? So what happens when you do, when you create a skill that a large number of people care about? I'll tell you what happens. It can bring in more revenue than you have time to make. It's so, you know what's really fascinating to me? I've never had a job. I want you to think about this. I'm 63 years of age. Okay, I have never had a job in my life where I made more than $30,000 a year. Never. And our business, predominantly because of social media, averages over $30,000 a day, 365 days a year. That's mind-blowing. That ought to show you. And I'm not flexing. I don't need you to think anything about me. I'm telling you this because your life can change. I was you. Like, there were times in my life, Brendan, where I had to decide, am I going to pay my water bill this month, my gas bill, my water bill, my gas bill, or my water bill, my electric bill, right? That's not even, like, when I think about that, like, you know, you'd get insurance so you could get a tag on your car, and then the insurance would expire, but you already had the tag, right? If you got pulled over, now you got a ticket for not having insurance. I remember what it's like to be so poor I couldn't pay attention. And now, because I've created content that's valuable to large numbers of people, apparently because people are paying attention to it, now we don't have to worry about money anymore. This is what I'm talking about, money game and how to play it. Like, what am I doing? I'm sitting here on a Monday morning in a studio that's air conditioned in Florida, thank God, and having a conversation with my friend in front of a camera, and thousands of people, like probably 10,000 people to 20,000 people will watch this in the next 24 hours. I'm playing a game. I'm not sawing a board. I'm not hammering a nail. I'm not driving a truck. I'm not lifting anything heavy. And people will say, but it's so hard. And my question would be, compared to what? Right?
I mean, that's the huge thing is like you just laid out like the power of it, yet people say it's too hard,
so hard.
Or it's too much work.
Right.
And it's like, well, look at the return on that work. 10,000 hours in a single day people
Right,
spent
that's
with your
more than
content.
a year.
Yeah. More than
In
a
a
year
day-
for
in a-
most
in a
people they
day.
can get
In
to
a
focus
day.
on their business. And yet they think it's a lot of work. Well, yeah, anything that you want to be good at takes time and energy and hard work to be good at it.
Right,
but
but-
if you put in the work, 99% of the people in the world that have businesses and brands, especially your competitors, are not putting in that work.
Right.
So if you put in that work, you will beat them out. You will be in a
100%.
position where you can generate more money than you ever imagined.
I think about when I first started my YouTube channel, all of my videos were created on a cell phone camera. All of them. That's all I had. Like, and maybe it wasn't even an iPhone, because iPhone wasn't even out. iPhone didn't come out until July of 2007. So like they were just on whatever camera I happened to have when I first started creating videos. And even when we first like definitively launched our channel, April 1st, 2022, the equipment that we used, the space that we did it in was very different than this, but YouTube paid for this entire studio and then some. So all I'm saying, okay, so I've got a question for you. Hey, what I'm doing right now is I'm really doing everything in my power to compel you, like, stop dragging your feet. What if you could have 1 million subscribers? What if you could have 300,000? What if you could have 100,000 watch time hours a month 10 years from now? What if it took you 10 years?
I cannot find a job. Have you tried looking in tech?
What if it took you 10 years? Here's the thing, 10 years is gonna go by anyway. You might as well do it. You're gonna be doing something. You might as well do something that matters. So, here's my question for you, Brendan. You wrote 1 million followers. Like, I mean, that's pretty compelling, 1 million followers. But then you wrote Hook Point. Why did you need to write another book? And now you've written a third book, The Guide to Going Viral. Like, what did you feel like you learned between 1 million followers and Hook Point? What did you feel like you learned between Hook Point and The Guide to Going Viral? Or what did you feel like you left out of the first one that you needed to create the second one, and the first and second one that you needed to create the third one? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so there's a few different answers to it. One is 1 million followers attracted a very specific audience with its title versus, so 1 million followers and the subtitle is How I Built a Massive Social Audience in 30 Days. And then Hook Point is How to Stand Out in a 3-second World. And it's just interesting the dynamic. First, they cover two different things. But first, I've just noticed, and because we just finished doing a rewrite of Hook Point, I spent the time rewriting it because we just see that they're attracting two different audiences. 1 million followers is kind of more that personal brand that wants to grow, that solopreneur that wants to build their personal brand and scale, versus Hook Point caters to, like, for example, I had a chairman of a $16 billion company pick up that book. That guy is probably not going to read 1 million followers just because of the hook. The same thing we're talking about, thumbnails and titles. I kind of look at it from a book perspective, is there's different titles, there's different covers and things of that nature that will attract different audiences. But in terms of when we go back to those three core pillars of grab attention, hold attention, monetize attention, Hook Point really focused on how do you actually grab the attention in those first 3 seconds, and also it talks about monetization. But I just saw that 1 million followers, there's a lot of great information in there, and we did have a section about hook points, but I wanted to dive super deep into that because if you don't have the ability to master that attention in those first 3 seconds, then you can never get to the ability to hold that attention. And then the guide to going viral, the reason I did that is, we've been spending the past 6 years and several $1 million building out our viral content model. And we just didn't have it kind of fully flushed out and formalized. We were just using it with our clients and kind of testing and iterating how to kind of really package it. And that is really almost like a how-to guide from scratch of like how to really use our model, which wasn't really as flushed out when the 1 million followers and Hook Point books were published.
Gotcha. What is the subtitle for the guide to going viral?
The art and science of succeeding on social media.
Okay, so can I give them a little sauce on your book titles? Okay. So a lot of authors, when they write books, they give it a title that they think is clever. I'm going to tell you something. You don't want to be clever, you want to be clear. I see authors who make a book title a riddle. It's the worst idea in the world. You think I've got this great title. It's not a great title. If it's a riddle, it's not a great title. If you're making people use mental bandwidth to figure out what you mean, they don't have any mental bandwidth left over to figure out whether or not they want to buy your book. Okay, so every one of his titles is a very clear word picture. 1 million followers. I don't need to read anything else, but I know what that book is about when I read 1 million followers. I'm like, oh, 1 million followers. I'd like to have 1 million followers. Boom, I pick up the book. Hook Point. It's a clear picture. There is a point at which you hook people. The guide to going viral. Oh, he's going to guide me into going viral. They're all three very clear pictures. What's the subtitle of 1 million followers again?
How I built a massive social audience in 30 days.
How I built a massive social audience in 30 days.